Oh, it's a biggie today. It's a biggie. Why does your thought leadership feel disconnected from your offers?
Hmm. This, if your thinking has evolved, but your thought leadership still sounds like an earlier version of you, this often happens. This disconnect becomes a common problem, and it's way more common than people actually realize.
And so today we're going to talk about why it happens, why we don't want it to happen, and what we're going to do about it.
This is the Grow Your Business for Good show. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon Hernandez.
And I'm Amy Hager.
This show explores what happens when a business outgrows its message and what it takes to rebuild messaging systems that carry the full depth of your work.
Each episode breaks down how messaging shapes trust, authority, and decision making, and why many established businesses find themselves explaining more while being understood less. We focus on the strategic shifts founders and leadership teams need to make when clarity alone isn't enough, so their expertise comes through without oversimplifying it. So I'm going to say something, and you're probably going to be like, well, duh. So here's my statement. Thought leadership drives growth when it naturally leads into your offer. And clearly, yes, that's a statement that we all want to check the true box next to. But there's often a disconnect that really happens when we're delivering our thought leadership. And I also want to dive in today why inspiration alone doesn't move people forward. And so I think as we really dissect those two things, we're going to land on how aligned thought leadership can actually create momentum and what that really, really looks like. But let's start kind of at this, I'm going to say the first problem, which is why this disconnect actually happens and why it happens so often. And so, Shannon, will you dive into what what really kind of causes this disconnect?
Yeah. Well, I know in my own brain and Google Docs
Yeah.
and laying awake at 3 a.m. thinking about problems of the world and my ideas for it. A lot of times we separate idea type content
Hmm.
from offer conversations.
Yeah.
Now, why would we do such a thing? Because we have a lot of freaking ideas, y'all. We have a
Right.
lot of ideas, right?
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
we're creating ideas, we're creating content, but it often doesn't tie to the offer to have a conversation or the offer to purchase the whatever it is that you're trying to sell,
right.
right? And so this is when we hear people say, and you'll feel this in your bones if it's true. I'm so good at what I do, but people aren't buying my stuff.
Mm,
And this is because your thought leadership, your ideas, they've become inspirational, they're conceptual, but they're detached from the very real world problems you solve for real world people reading your stuff. And your
yeah.
offers like live somewhere else entirely. They're just like, oh, my offers are over there, but these are the things that I talk about
Right.
because separation feels safer, right?
Mm,
Separation feels safer to be known for, in my case, joy.
yeah.
But what, how do we get from joy to joyful business revolution, right? There may be some friction there. And so a lot of times, I know with my own body of work, if y'all don't know, I got a book called Practical Joy sitting over on Amazon. It's like the wicked stepchild of the brand. I swear to God. Because guess what? I'm always talking about messaging, or I'm always talking about
Right.
upgrading your thought leadership, or I'm always talking about like when your workout grows your message that I forget. Oh, yeah. By the way, The very thing, the foundation of Joyful Business Revolution is this body of work I have called Practical Joy,
Yeah.
right? So I often don't know how to integrate that in. It just
Mhm.
becomes like, you know, Cinderella and the stepchild over there doing their thing.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
The whole concept, if they build it, they will come and someone will just magically find it.
yeah, ain't happening, y'all. Ain't
Yeah.
happening. So we have to be careful, especially as our bodies of work grow. I mean,
Right.
the Joy book is not my only body of work. I have
Mhm.
an earlier book about leaving public education. Spoiler alert, nothing changed in the last 15 years. I took it off the off the buying list. All
Yeah.
right, out of market. I have a body of work around content personality. I have a body
Mhm.
of work around the profit-driven messaging ecosystem. I've got a body of work developing around um, the 10 forms of wealth all of us should be cultivating, not just like wealth in the bank account.
Yeah.
And Amy, I have a new one I thought I'd drop on you today.
Shannon loves to drop things on me when we're recording podcast episodes.
The physics of words.
Oh, that ties really well to the psychology of messaging too.
I
So
know, but it's
I like
like
it.
the fit, like when you land on the right word for how
Yeah,
you're feeling or how you want people to feel, you feel it in your body.
right.
So anyway, we'll see. I don't think I have time to do it. But the point of all of this is if I start talking about the physics of words,
Hmm.
then I better be tying it to messaging evolution or
Right,
redoing your messaging system and not just talking about the physics of words out on
right.
the interwebs.
Exactly. Well, and I think to also tie back, like the content personality pieces from the Joy book, some of these earlier thought leader content pieces, we actually use though with our clients. And so I pull chapter 2 of that Joy book. I go through with probably 90% of our clients. And sometimes I go through it with them more than once in our year, or if they're working 2 years with us. And so it's not that those concepts get completely lost or they are no longer a part of the brand, but they are no longer the forward facing part of the brand.
Mm.
And that's where the thought leadership evolution has really, really happened for us. And, I'm going to, while we're talking about the Joy book, I think one of the reasons why we stopped kind of leading with the joy book is a lot of people want to have more joy and happiness in their lives, but often they were not far enough along in their own business to work with us. They weren't far enough along in their own building of offers and ideas. And they hooked on this concept of joy. And so we had a lot of misaligned clients, beautiful people, but misaligned clients for the level of work that Shannon and I are really good at. And so it created some friction and some frustration even with us internally because this is a great piece, but when we lead with it, it doesn't bring the people that we want to actually be helping. So that also is an interesting rub that can create some friction is it is a great piece, but it's not attracting the right people.
Wait, I just had an image when you said a rub that creates fiction of running a marathon and my thighs rubbing together.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no one enjoys that rub.
Oh my God. So, um, we have to be careful. I mean,
Right.
honestly, like I do want people to have very joyful businesses and be able to do marketing in their own way and to understand that messaging drives everything and will be the end product of your joy. But if I only talk about joy, one, it becomes a intangible idea, not connected to anything else.
Hmm.
Two, it creates inspiration and motivation, but not the right kind of buyer or client that we want. And
Right.
so if you talk about your ideas and they're inspiring, but people aren't moving forward, it's usually because they don't know what to do next. They can't tie this stuff together.
Hmm.
And mature audiences are looking for our guidance. They're looking for clarity about our process of how we get them from A to B or A to Z. And they're looking for pathways that create success, not just random ideas. And so we're constantly saying to our clients, we got to reel this in. We've got to bring this back and tie this to the offer that will make sense here.
Right. And I'll say, like, inspiration as a thought leader does feel really good because you get a lot of agreement, you get emotional resonance, people admire you for your thoughts. So it feels really good. But like Shannon said, a mature audience is really looking for more of that guidance, that clarity about the process. And they really, when they're just hanging on inspiration alone, they don't know what to do next. And so I'm curious when we talk and unpack how aligned thought leadership can actually create momentum versus relying on inspiration alone. Where do you think it actually creates that momentum from then?
Yeah. I think one of the best things we do with our clients is the good doctor, bad doctor exercise.
Mm, yeah, that's a fun one.
And for those of you who haven't experienced this as a client or a workshop, or in a workshop, it's actually looking at the symptoms that we love to talk in symptoms.
Hmm.
If your marketing, if your bank account is lower than you want, that's a symptom. If your marketing is not producing engagement, that's a symptom. If your sales page gets lots of hits but nobody's buying, that's a symptom. We've been taught to talk in symptoms. Okay? But what is wrong with that is we skip this whole piece in the middle, which is, well, what's the problem?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right? Symptoms are not problems. And so aligned thought leadership will introduce the problems that your work actually solves. And this has been so enlightening to me to really dive into what I'm calling right now, it may change names, the 5-step simple recognition funnel.
Mm.
And I'm going to be teaching this next week in our 3-day challenge because what I realized is a lot of the funnels have been built with symptom after symptom. If this, then this. If you're feeling this,
Mm.
then this.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if people don't know the problem, the symptoms don't make sense. It's
Hmm.
like when you go to the doctor and you have a swollen toe. You'd be really pissed off if a doctor walked in, didn't look at you and said, here's your prescription.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I have questions. This happened, this happened. No, no, here, take your prescription and go, right? So we have to be able to introduce problems that our work actually solves. We have to be able to name the decisions that our offers are help support people in making,
Hmm.
right? Overwhelmed people do not buy. People overwhelmed by decisions, if they're hopping over to your website and seeing 50 ways they can work with you, forget it. It's not probably going to happen. And we have to use our thought leadership to reflect the same worldview that our services embody, right? And so this is where it can start feeling really disconnected. And we see this a lot when people come to us and they say, well, I want to host a retreat. I'm ready to host a retreat. And we say, well, why do you want to
Yeah.
host a retreat? Well, I like to travel. I want to get paid to travel. Okay, but how does this tie to what's the bridge, right? What
Right.
is the natural bridge of what you're doing now to hosting a retreat? Because if we don't get that right in the messaging, it is going to feel forced. It is going to feel
Yeah.
salesy, and your people are going to be very confused and not take action.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I want to dive in just a little bit. Like, letting your thought leadership lead does not mean that you are pitching. It does not mean that you are explaining your offers consistently. Like, if you feel like that's all you're doing is explaining your offers all day and pitching at people, We need to take a step back, my friends. And so, what it really means is when you orientate people to making a change and helping them recognize their readiness. I always say the first step in any conversation that you have with a potential client, it needs to be a clarity step. And so, clarifying what kind of support fits is also part of this journey. And then the work becomes the obvious next step. If you're in your sales conversation and you're just diving into this is how I help people, and you're not having that conversation to see are they ready for the change? Do they even recognize the problem? Are they clear on the problem? And when you can really go through this, and we just dissected our soulful sales conversations this week in our group mastermind session. And again, we have to do this frequently. I'm the salesperson in this brand, and luckily, I teach sales. So I do this and remind myself of this process often. But if teaching sales is not a part of the services that you're offering your clients, you don't get that pleasure. And so you do need to take time to go through and remind yourself that we need to make these steps so that people can see that the working with you is the obvious next step. That way you can get away from pitching and really explaining the offers consistently or over explaining the offers as well.
Yeah. And some very pointed questions will serve you well here. It doesn't matter if you're updating your sales script. Amy helps all of our clients with the 5 golden questions that they have to ask and get answers to so we even know if these people are ready to move on with our clients, right? So it doesn't matter if you use some of these questions in your sales scripts or you use a question in a DM when you're outreach. I've been experimenting with a beautiful question over on LinkedIn. Anyone that connects with me, hello, hello. I say hello, and then I say, I'd love to support you in your goal in the next 90 days. What are you working towards? It's
Mm-hmm.
a good question. And some people come back and say, oh my God, I haven't thought about my goals. I'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler, I usually don't see those people again.
Yeah.
Okay. But for the ones who do know and they can articulate the goal clearly, my next question is always, why is that your goal?
Yeah.
And this is something we work on with our clients in our Monday accountability calls, right? If you're going to set your 3 goals for the week that are going to move your business forward, why did you choose those goals? It's not
Mm-hmm.
just this is my goal, but we want to help people really think, why is this goal the goal this week and what's it going to do in the bigger picture of things?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be really careful as established consultants, speakers, trainers, and strategists that our thought leadership moves people towards the path of solving a real problem, and people just don't see us as someone with great ideas.
Right.
That is when momentum stalls out, trust gets lost, and things get really, what I'm now calling Amy wobbly.
Yeah, I totally get that. And just to kind of bring Shannon recapped and kind of wrapped this up pretty well, but I want to add another bow to this package. We were talking earlier about the joy book and practical joy. The questions about why are these your 3 priorities to move your business forward this week? Also very much so ties to building a joyful business. So it all comes together very, very nicely. Even though the joy book doesn't lead with our messaging, it still very much so is influenced how we work with our clients and the process of which we guide them through to really get that momentum in their business. So,
Well, and let's not forget that the last question we ask on Monday accountability is
yeah,
what will you be doing for joy this week?
exactly. So,
Because none of us were meant to just sit around and grind it out on a freaking computer 24/7.
I always say, like, if you're building your business into a prison, why didn't you just stay at your crappy job before? So we don't want to build
Oh,
business
mic
into a prison.
drop.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, well, we're going to wrap this sucker up so that way we can get going with our next one. But if you're an established consultant, strategist, speaker, or trainer, and you're really finding yourself explaining your work more than you should be, I want to encourage you to download our profit-driven messaging ecosystem guide. It's at joyfulbusinessrevolution.com/profit messaging, and this guide will help you bring coherence and structure back to the body of work and your thought leadership. So until next time, have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to Grow Your Business for Good. This show is a part of our work at the Joyful Business Revolution, where we help founders and leadership teams rebuild messaging systems when their work has outgrown their message. If you're explaining too much and people still don't fully understand the value of your work, you can explore more at joyfulbusinessrevolution.com.
Until next time, remember this: when your messaging system is aligned, sales conversations shorten and your expertise comes through clearly.